Coffee Break. Thoughtful conversations for a busy world. Let's begin.
You know that feeling? It's 2 a.m. The house is completely quiet. You know you should be sleeping. You've got that big meeting tomorrow, but you're just staring at the ceiling.
Mm-hmm. And that's when your brain decides it's showtime.
Exactly. It just fires up this, this movie projector right on the back of your eyelids, and you didn't even buy a ticket.
And the movie is never a romantic comedy.
Sure.
It's never your highlight reel, right? It's never the greatest hits.
Never. It's always a horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's a courtroom drama where you're somehow both the defendant and the prosecutor at the same time.
And the judge.
And the judge, yes.
Yeah.
It's a replay of that fight you had years ago.
Yeah.
Or, that breakup conversation that just, it felt like it was happening in 2 completely different languages.
Or that one comment, one passive-aggressive comment from your boss in an exit interview that you didn't have a comeback for. Not in the moment, anyway.
But you have one now. At 2 a.m, you have the perfect one.
Of course. It's what I call the universal archives of unfinished business. We all have a library card. It's where we store every misunderstanding, every slight, every single time the math just didn't add up.
The math didn't add up.
Yeah.
That's it. It's this gnawing feeling that the books aren't balanced, that there's some kind of, debt owed to the truth.
Right.
And the instinct, the thing that is just screaming at us in the middle of the night, is that we have to fix it. We need to go back. We need to get them to understand. We need to make our case again. We call this whole thing the search for closure.
And it's such a seductive idea, isn't it? It's this belief that there's one missing puzzle piece out there. Maybe it's an apology or an explanation or just a moment where the other person finally goes, aha, I get it. And if we can just find that one piece.
The pain stops?
The pain stops. You can close the book, put it on the shelf, and finally get some sleep.
But today, in this deep dive, we are digging into a stack of material, and we're centering it around a source text called the Boundary Blueprint. And it argues something. Well, it feels pretty radical. It suggests that this instinct, this whole 2 a.m. project to fix it, isn't just a waste of our time. It's actually a trap, a psychological trap that keeps us chained to the very pain that we're trying so desperately to escape.
That's it. And the core idea we're going to unpack today, it sounds so simple, but it is incredibly difficult to actually swallow. And it's this. Closure is a fantasy. Boundaries are what actually work.
Closure is a fantasy. I have to admit, when I first read that line in the source, it felt heavy. It felt cynical almost. Are we just supposed to give up on being understood? It feels a little like admitting defeat.
I get that. I really do. It feels cynical because we are wired for stories. We're narrative creatures, We need a beginning, a middle, and an end.
We want the third act.
We want the third act. We want the hero to be vindicated. We want the villain to have a moment of clarity and realize the error of their ways. But what all the research points to is that chasing that satisfying Hollywood ending is precisely what keeps us stuck in the messy, painful middle.
So the goal of this deep dive isn't to make us all cynical and give up.
Not at all. The goal, our mission here, is to help move you from a state of waiting for an answer to a state of taking action. It's about moving from passive to active. It's really about efficiency.
Efficiency, I like that word. Because this applies to everyone, right? This isn't just about breakups. It's for the CEO who's still ruminating on a failed merger from 5 years ago. Or the person trying to get over a friendship that just fizzled out.
And we have to really define the stakes here for you listening. If you are chasing closure, you aren't just feeling sad. You are actively hemorrhaging mental energy. Every minute you spend on it is a minute you can't spend on your present, on your future. You are, in a very real sense, tethered to a dead situation.
Tethered. That's a powerful image. Like an emotional umbilical cord.
I think of it more like a contract, an emotional contract. Let's say you leave a job or a relationship. Physically, you're gone. You packed your boxes, you're in a new apartment, new zip code. But if you are still waiting for that other person to validate your experience...
To say you were right to leave.
Yes. Or, I'm sorry for how I treated you. Then you haven't actually signed the release papers on that contract.
Yeah.
Emotionally, you are still on their payroll. You are still on call for them 24/7.
And so today's deep dive is about handing you the pen to sign those papers for yourself.
Exactly, because here's the spoiler alert. And this is the clinical reality that the Boundary Blueprint just hammers home again and again. You do not need an apology to heal. And this is the part that really stings for a lot of us. Even if you get one, it often doesn't actually fix the problem.
Wow.
Boundaries are the only tool in your entire toolkit that function unilaterally. They don't require a cosigner. They don't need anyone else's permission to be valid.
Okay, so let's get into the weeds on this. We need to really unpack this whole idea of the myth of closure. Why does the source call closure a fantasy? Because, I mean, I feel like I've had closure before. I've had that moment of, okay, we're good now. We talked it out and it's resolved.
Right. And that's a key distinction. Of course, it exists in healthy, mutual, respectful relationships. If you accidentally step on my toe and you say, ouch, and I immediately say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, and we move on, that's a microclosure. It's a repair.
Right. The books are balanced again.
But that's not what we're talking about when we say, I need closure. We're not usually talking about a healthy dynamic. We're talking about a significant rupture, a betrayal, a deep confusion. And what we're really looking for in those moments is what the source calls a shared narrative.
A shared narrative.
Yeah.
So that just means I need you to agree with my version of the story.
Precisely. It's the need for the other person to look you in the eye and say, yes, you're right, I hurt you. I did it because of X, Y, and Z, and I was wrong. You want consensus on reality. You want both of you to look at the same painting and agree that the sky is blue and the grass is green.
Which on the surface seems completely reasonable. I mean, if you hurt me, you should admit it. That feels like basic human decency.
It is reasonable if you're dealing with a reasonable person.
Yeah.
But here's the fundamental trap, and it's the first huge insight from the source material. You are going to the hardware store and asking for bread.
Okay, I love this analogy. It really stuck out to me when I was reading. Can you break that down?
You're hungry. You need emotional sustenance. You need things like empathy, accountability, clarity, validation. That's the bread. It's what will nourish you. But you are standing at the counter of a hardware store, which could be a toxic boss, a narcissistic ex-partner, a dysfunctional family system, and you're just screaming, why won't you sell me any bread?
And they're just looking back at you completely baffled, thinking, we sell hammers, we've got drills, we've got a great deal on spackle.
Exactly. They literally do not have the inventory. The source makes this point so clearly. If they had the emotional maturity, the self-awareness, the empathy, the bread, to give you the closure you're asking for, they probably wouldn't have hurt you in that specific boundary-crossing way to begin with.
That is humbling. And a little bit devastating, actually, to realize you're banging on the counter demanding a product they are physically incapable of producing.
And you can bang on that counter for years, decades even.
But why do we do it? If it's so obvious they sell hammers, why can't we just see the hammers and walk away and find a bakery? Why do we stay at that counter for so long?
Because of how the human brain is wired to handle ambiguity. And this brings us to a really fascinating psychological concept called the Zeigarnik effect.
The Zeigarnik effect. Okay, lay it on me.
It was discovered by a Russian psychologist, Bluma Zeigarnik, back in the 1920s. She was sitting in a cafe in Vienna, and she noticed something incredible about the waiters.
What was it?
They could remember these ridiculously complex orders perfectly. You know, who had the strudel, who had the coffee with milk, who wanted extra cream, all of it. They held it all in their heads right up until the moment the bill was paid.
And then what happened?
The second the transaction was closed, the information just vanished. Poof. Their brain dumped the data because the task was complete. But if the bill wasn't paid, if a table got up and left, they could remember that order vividly for hours.
So an unresolved conflict, an unanswered question. It's like an unpaid bill in your brain.
It's exactly that. It's an open loop. And your brain absolutely despises open loops because from an evolutionary standpoint, an open loop could be a threat.
Did I hear a tiger in that bush, or was it just the wind?
Precisely. You can't just go, maybe. You need to resolve it. You need to know. So when a relationship ends vaguely or a conflict at work is left hanging, your brain spins up this background process, like an app on your phone, to solve the puzzle.
Yeah.
And it keeps the file open right on your mental desktop, constantly drawing power.
That way we do the shower argument. I'll just be shampooing my hair, and suddenly my brain decides it's time to prosecute a case from 2018. And I'm just brilliant. I'm coming up with the perfect zinger I wish I'd said.
That is a perfect example of what the source calls a simulation loop. Your brain is desperately trying to close that Zeigarnik loop. It's running different scenarios. What if I had said X? Would they have stayed? What if I explain it to them like this? Will they finally understand me?
So it's an attempt to force the bill to be paid so my brain can finally forget the order.
Yes. And it feels so productive in the moment, doesn't it? It feels like you're actually solving the problem.
It does. I feel like I'm making progress.
Because each time you win the argument in your head, you get a tiny little dopamine hit, a little spark of, aha, I figured it out. But it's a false positive. It's a counterfeit victory because you're only solving it in the simulation, not in reality. In the real world, the other person still doesn't get it, or, more likely, they still don't care.
Oof. That's the hard pill to swallow, isn't it? The source mentions that so often the other person simply doesn't care. And that just sounds so harsh. It feels almost impossible to believe that someone we loved or worked with or were related to doesn't care that we're in pain.
It is harsh, but we have to add some nuance here. It's not always about malice. Sometimes it's simply about incapacity. They can't give you what you want.
Okay, what do you mean by incapacity?
Well, think about a toxic workplace. The system isn't a person. It doesn't have a conscience. It can't feel remorse. It can't give you closure. It can only give you a severance package. Or if you're dealing with someone who is deeply emotionally immature, their entire ego structure might be built on the idea that they are never wrong.
So for them to admit fault to you.
Would require them to dismantle their own self-image. It would be a threat to their entire reality, so their brain literally cannot allow them to do it. It's not that they won't give you bread, they can't even perceive what bread is.
So waiting for them to validate your feelings is like waiting for a brick wall to decide to become a door. It's just not what it's built for.
And that brings us right to the next critical point, the cost of waiting. The source argues very persuasively that waiting for closure is an active behavior. It's not passive, it's not just sitting by, it is costing you something every single day.
It's costing you RAM, like on a computer.
Exactly like that. Think of your brain as a laptop. If you have that search for closure app running constantly in the background, scanning old emails for clues, replaying conversations, checking their social media, your whole system slows down.
You can't focus on other things.
You're less creative. You're less present with your kids at the dinner table. You're less effective at your new job because part of your brain is still clocked in at the old one. You are effectively paying a resentment tax on your own mental energy every single day.
I see this all the time with people who have what I call vampire bosses. The boss just sucks all the life out of them. They finally get a new job, they leave, but they can't let go.
What does that look like?
They keep checking the company's LinkedIn page. They keep texting their old coworkers. So is it a total disaster without me? Is everything falling apart?
They're looking for the data point. They want the confirmation that says, we made a huge mistake letting you go.
They want the pretty woman moment. Big mistake.
Big.
Huge.
We all want that moment. It's so human to want that vindication. But the clinical reality is, most of the time, the company has already moved on. The ex has moved on. By waiting for them to admit they miss you or that they were wrong, you are the only one still in the relationship. You are the only one still paying rent on a property that was condemned years ago.
That is a terrifying thought. The idea of being the only person still in a relationship 5 years after it actually ended.
It happens every single day. Millions of people are doing it right now.
Okay, so if closure is the trap, if it's the fantasy, and if we accept, truly accept, that the hardware store does not sell bread, what do? We can't just walk around with these gaping open wounds forever. The source is very clear on this. It says boundaries actually work.
And this is the pivot point for our entire conversation. This is where we move from problem to solution. But to do that, we have to understand the fundamental difference in the mechanics, in the physics of closure versus boundaries.
Because it can feel similar,
Yeah.
right? On the surface, both are about being done. Both are about stopping the pain.
They seem related, but their power dynamic is the complete opposite. Think about it. Closure is a request.
A request.
Yes. Please understand me. Please explain why you did that. Please apologize. Please change. In the closure model, you are the petitioner. You are, in a sense, on your knees asking for something from someone else. You've given them all the power.
And a boundary. How's that different?
A boundary is not a request. A boundary is a decision.
I like that.
It's a unilateral declaration. I will not accept this behavior in my life. I am walking away from this dynamic. This conversation is now over. The power is entirely in your hands.
So closure asks for permission to feel better, but boundaries assert the reality you're choosing to live in.
You've got it. Closure relies on their compliance. Its success is totally dependent on them. But a boundary relies only on your resolve. Closure hopes they will change. Boundaries assume they won't, and then you plan accordingly.
Okay, let's make this really concrete. We need to apply this to real life. Because setting boundaries has become one of those phrases that's really easy to say and absolutely terrifying to actually do. So let's take that workplace tension scenario from the outline.
Great. So let's imagine you have a boss who's a chaos agent. You know the type. They change the project goals at the last minute. They gaslight you about deadlines you agreed to. They send those sharp, critical emails at 10 p.m. on a Saturday night.
Ugh, my cortisol's rising just hearing that. I think we've all had some version of that boss. So what's the closure approach in that situation?
The closure approach is what I call the great over-explanation. You get that 10 p.m. email, and you spend the next hour crafting a 3-paragraph response. You attach documents, you screen grab hold messages, you try to explain, well, actually, as per my email from last Tuesday, we agreed that the deadline was Friday, not today.
You're taking it to court. You're bringing all your evidence to prove that you are innocent, that you are right.
You're trying to use logic to solve what is fundamentally an emotional or systemic problem. Your underlying belief is, if I can just show him the data, if I can just make him see reason, he will stop being chaotic. You are waiting for him to reply and say, you're right, I was disorganized, my mistake. Thank you for clarifying.
Which is a sentence that has never been uttered by a chaos agent boss in the history of the world. He'll just pivot to a new complaint, or worse, completely ignore your email.
Exactly. He just moves the goalposts. So now let's wipe that whole slate clean. Let's try the boundary approach. Step 1 is what some call radical acceptance.
Okay.
You just accept the reality. My boss is a chaos agent. He sells hammers, not organization. He is not going to change. You stop wishing for him to be different.
Okay. It's painful, but I accept he's a disaster. I stop waiting for him to wake up one day and become a great manager. Now what do I do?
You stop trying to fix him, and you start protecting yourself. The boundary isn't a conversation with him. It's not you saying, I need you to be more organized, because he won't be. The boundary is a decision you make for yourself. I do not check work email after 7 p.m. Period. Full stop.
But won't he get angry? Won't there be consequences if I don't reply to that 10 p.m. email?
Probably. He might get angry. But his feelings are his to manage, not yours. Your job is to manage your own peace. And you document everything. When he sends that chaotic last-minute request on Monday morning, you don't defend or explain. You simply reply with a neutral question.
Like what?
Received. Thank you. Given this new priority, which of the other 3 projects you assign me should I deprioritize to accommodate it?
Ooh. That's cold. It feels a little confrontational.
It's not cold. It's neutral. And that is such a key word from the boundary blueprint. Closure is hot. It's emotional. It's messy. It's dramatic. Boundaries, when they're done right, are neutral. They are structural. You are, in effect, becoming what's known as gray rock.
A gray rock. I've heard this term before, but I'm not totally clear on it.
It's a technique often recommended for dealing with high-conflict personalities or narcissists. You make yourself as boring and unreactive as a gray rock on the side of the road. No emotional fuel, no defense, no anger, no tears, just flat, neutral facts. Okay, I see. That does not work for me.
You're starving the fire of your reaction.
Yes. Because toxic systems and chaotic people run on emotional reactions. They want you to get upset. They want you to scramble and defend yourself. That's their fuel. If you stop providing that fuel, the system has to go look for it somewhere else. You become uninteresting. And in these dynamics, uninteresting is safe.
That's a huge reframe. The goal isn't to win, it's to become uninteresting.
Exactly.
Okay, let's apply this to the other big one from the source. The unresolved relationship, the vague breakup, the slow fade, or the worst, just getting ghosted.
The absolute worst. It's an epidemic in modern dating because it's the path of least resistance for the person ending things.
And the instinct, the overwhelming urge, is to send that text right. Hey, can we just talk? I'm so confused. I just want to understand what happened. Did I do something wrong?
That text is the closure trap in its purest form. You tell yourself you want understanding, but what you're really hoping for is reversal.
What do you mean?
You hope that having the talk will make them realize they've made a terrible mistake. Or at the very least, you want to hear them say that you were important, that you mattered, that it wasn't your fault. You want them to soothe your pain.
Guilty as charged. So what does the boundary approach look like when someone has just vanished? How can you set a boundary with a ghost?
You can. It's a powerful one. The boundary approach is to make a decision that the behavior itself is the answer.
Say that again. That feels really important.
The silence is the closure. Their absence is the explanation. If someone is able to just stop communicating with you, that is a complete sentence. And that sentence says, I do not have the capacity, respect, or interest to continue this connection. You don't need them to say those words. Their actions are shouting it.
So instead of asking why, which is the closure question, you just accept what, which is the boundary reality.
Yes. And the boundary here is mostly internal, but it has external actions. You block their number, and this is key. not to punish them, but to protect yourself from the temptation to check if they've texted. It's a fence for you. You mute their social media stories. You make a firm decision. The price of admission to my life is basic respect and communication. This person did not pay. Therefore, they are no longer allowed in.
You don't ask for a final meeting. You just lock the door yourself.
That requires an incredible amount of self-worth, though. To be able to say, I don't need you to tell me I'm valuable. I already know that I am, and so I am walking away from treatment that suggests otherwise.
It does, but it also builds self-worth. It's like a muscle. Every time you resist the urge to send that desperate, pleading text, you're doing a rep. You're putting a deposit into your own self-respect bank account. The self-respect bank account.
Yeah.
I love that. Now, I have to imagine a lot of our listeners, especially the learners in our audience, are thinking, this all sounds great in theory, but I absolutely hate conflict. We hear the word boundary, and we immediately picture a showdown.
A big, dramatic scene.
Right. Flipping a table at Thanksgiving dinner or having a screaming match with a neighbor in the driveway. The Real Housewives version of setting boundaries.
You will respect me. Yeah.
Exactly. But the source explicitly says that boundaries create peace, not conflict. So how can a boundary create peace if it feels like you're gearing up for a fight?
Because a true, well-constructed boundary isn't a weapon you use to attack someone. It's a fence you build to protect your own property.
Okay, stick with that fence analogy. Help me visualize this.
All right. Let's say your neighbor's dog keeps pooping on your lawn every morning. You have two options. Option A is the closure or confrontation approach. You wait by your window every morning, getting angrier and angrier, stewing over your coffee. The second you see the dog, you run outside screaming. You get into a big argument with the neighbor. You try to explain to them the principles of hygiene and property lines. You demand an apology.
That sounds absolutely exhausting. And the neighbor probably ends up thinking I'm the crazy one, and the dog definitely doesn't understand English.
Right. And your lawn is still covered in poop.
Yeah.
Now, option B, the boundary approach. You build a fence. You don't say a single word to the neighbor. The next day, the dog trots over, bumps into the fence, sniffs around for a minute, and then turns around and walks away. Your lawn is clean, and you are inside, peacefully drinking your coffee and reading a book.
The fence does the work.
The fence does the work. And this is what the source material calls a quiet boundary. And this is a game changer for people who hate conflict. The most effective, most powerful boundaries are often the ones you never even announce. You don't need a press conference. You don't need to write a manifesto. You just need a fence.
Okay, give me a real-life example of a quiet boundary. Not with a dog.
Okay, let's take that critical friend. We all know one, the frenemy, who always makes those little digs, those little backhanded compliments about your job or your outfit, but always does it with a smile so you can't get mad.
Oh, that dress is so brave. I could never pull that off.
Exactly that. So the confrontation approach is to say, hey, that was a mean thing to say. Stop being mean to me. And then what do?
They gaslight you. I was just joking. Wow, you're so sensitive. I can't say anything to you.
And now you're in an argument, you feel small, and you're the one who looks like the problem.
Yeah.
The quiet boundary is different. You just shift. You stop initiating plans with them. When they text you, you take a full day to text back with a short, neutral reply. You stop sharing your vulnerable secrets and your big dreams with them. You silently downgrade them in your own mind from inner circle friend to general acquaintance. You don't announce it. You just change your behavior.
You move the fence line, and you stop giving them access to the most valuable parts of your property.
That's it. Boundaries are fundamentally about access control. You are the bouncer at the club of your own life. You don't have to get into a fist fight with the people you don't let in. You just have to stand at the door and keep the velvet rope up.
But what happens when people notice the velvet rope is up? Because they will. The source mentions something that sounds frankly terrifying. It's called the extinction burst. That sounds like a dinosaur-level event.
It's a term from behavioral psychology, and it is absolutely crucial for anyone listening to understand this. If you don't know about the extinction burst, you will set a boundary, things will get worse, and you will think your boundary is failing, when in fact it's the ultimate sign that it's working.
Okay, you have to explain that. How does it getting worse mean it's working?
When you first set a new boundary, when you first put up that fence, the other person will almost never say, "Oh, a fence, how lovely, I respect your property lines." Their first reaction will be to escalate their previous behavior.
Like a toddler in the grocery store who wants candy, and you say no, and they don't just accept it. They lie on the floor and start screaming.
It is exactly like that. The classic psychology example is a lab rat. A rat learns to press a lever to get a food pellet. It presses the lever, it gets a pellet. Easy. Then the scientists turn off the machine, When the rat presses the lever and nothing comes out, it doesn't just shrug its little rat shoulders and walk away.
What does it do?
It jams the lever. It attacks the lever. It bites it. It presses it 100 times a minute in a frenzy. That frantic, heightened spike in behavior right before it gives up is the extinction burst.
So let's translate that. If I stop answering my toxic mother's guilt-tripping phone calls after 8 p.m., she's not just going to stop calling.
No, she is going to call you 50 times in a row. She will text you in all caps. She will call your sister to ask what's wrong with you. She might even show up at your house. That is the extinction burst. And this is the critical moment. This is where most people cave.
Because it's so uncomfortable. They say, see, the boundary didn't work. It's making her worse. I have to answer the phone just to make it stop.
Yeah, but the source is so clear on this. The burst means it is working. It means they've realized the lever is broken and they are jamming it with all their might, trying to get it to work again. And if you give in during the burst, if you pick up the phone on the 51st ring, you have just taught them something incredibly dangerous.
What have I taught them?
You've taught them that the new price of your attention isn't one phone call, it's 51 phone calls.
Oh, wow. I've just reset the price much higher.
You've done something worse. You've put them on what's called an intermittent reinforcement schedule. It's the psychological principle that makes slot machines in Vegas so addictive. If a slot machine paid out every single time, it would be boring. If it never paid out, you'd walk away. But because it pays out sometimes, unpredictably,
You'll keep pulling that lever forever, hoping this is the one.
you're turning yourself into a human slot machine for them. If you answer that guilt-tripping call sometimes, you are training them to harass you.
So consistency with the boundary isn't just a nice idea. It is biologically necessary to extinguish the behavior.
You have to be a broken vending machine, not a slot machine. You have to weather the burst. If you hold the line, the behavior eventually, inevitably, flatlines. The rat gives up on the lever, but you have to have the courage to survive that initial spike.
That is such a practical and powerful framework. Just knowing to expect the escalation and to see it as a sign of success makes it so much more bearable. Okay, we've covered the theory, the neuroscience behind it, the scary extinction burst. Let's get down to brass tacks. The source provides a blueprint, a step-by-step guide for setting these limits without needing a PhD in conflict resolution.
And crucially, without sounding like a therapy bot. This is about using normal human language, not corporate HR speak.
Right, so step 1 in the blueprint is identify the energy leak.
Yes. You can't build a fence if you don't know where your property line is. And for many of us, especially if we're chronic people pleasers, we're so used to being trespassed upon that we don't even feel it anymore. It's just normal. The best emotional sensor you have for a crossed boundary is the feeling of resentment.
Resentment, not anger. What's the difference?
Anger is often hot and fast. It's a flash. Resentment is cold and heavy, and it's repetitive. Resentment is that low, simmering feeling of, oh, I cannot believe I have to do this again. If you see a certain name pop up on your phone and your stomach physically drops, that's an energy leak. If you feel drained, exhausted, and bitter after every single interaction with a specific person, that's a leak.
Okay, so I've found the leak. Let's say it's my cousin. She calls me 3 times a week to complain about her marriage for an hour, but she never once asks me how I'm doing. I hang up the phone feeling used and resentful. That's my leak. What is step 2?
Step 2 is the hardest but most important. It's drop the why.
Drop the why.
This is the critical discipline. You have to force yourself to stop asking, why is she so self-absorbed? Why doesn't she care enough about me to ask about my day? Why can't she see what she's doing? The why is the rabbit hole of closure seeking. It's that simulation loop we talked about earlier, and it leads nowhere.
Because knowing why she's self-absorbed won't change the fact that she is self-absorbed.
Exactly. You must shift the question in your own mind from why is she doing this to what am I going to do about it? You move from analysis to strategy, from passive victim to active participant.
Action over analysis. I like that. So that brings us to step 3, which is my favorite part of the blueprint, the if-then protocol.
This is where the rubber meets the road. An if-then protocol is essentially an algorithm for your own behavior. It's a pre-made decision. You write the code when you are calm and rational so that you don't have to think or panic in the heat of the moment. When we get emotional, our IQ literally drops. We need a script.
Okay, so give me the if-then script for my complaining cousin.
The protocol is internal first. You decide for yourself. If my cousin calls and starts looping on the same marital complaint she's had for the last 10 years, then I'll give the conversation exactly 5 more minutes before I politely end the call.
And what does that sound like out loud? Because interrupting someone, especially family, feels so rude.
It can be gentle. 5 minutes in, you can say, hey, I'm so sorry to cut you off, but I just realized I've got to run in about 5 minutes, so I'll have to let you go soon. Or if you want to be a bit more direct and therapeutic, you could say, I really hate to see you struggling with this so much. It sounds so painful. But I also feel like we're just spinning our wheels here and I don't have the answers for you. Have you ever considered talking to a professional about this? I think they could help more than I can.
Wow, that second one is bold, but it's also kind.
It's kind and it's honest. It's saying, I am a hardware store, you are hungry and you need a bakery. I cannot provide the bread you need.
Let's do a harder one. A pushy parent who uses guilt as a weapon to demand you come home for every single holiday.
A classic. The if-then protocol is, if my parent starts using guilt-tripping language about me coming home for Christmas, then I will repeat my decision once, like a broken record, and then I will end the phone call.
The broken record technique. I love this one from the source material.
It is so effective for people who refuse to listen to your reasoning. It goes exactly like this.
But if you don't come for Christmas, you'll be breaking your mother's heart.
I know you're disappointed, but we won't be able to make it this year.
After all I've done for you, this is so selfish.
I understand you're upset, but our decision is final. We won't be there this year. I have to go now, but I love you. And then you hang up.
You don't get into the weeds, you don't argue, you don't justify your decision.
You never, JD, that's the acronym to burn into your brain, do not justify, argue, defend, or explain.
JD. Okay. Why is Jade so bad? It feels like the polite thing to do, to give a reason.
When you jade with a reasonable person, it's fine. It's called a conversation. When you jade with a boundary pusher, you are handing them ammunition and a roadmap to defeat you. If you say, I can't come for Christmas because the flights are just too expensive, you're not stating a boundary. You're starting a negotiation.
And then they'll immediately say, don't worry about it, I'll buy your tickets.
Exactly. And now you're trapped. You either have to go or you have to admit that the money wasn't the real reason, which makes you look like a liar. Oh, we won't be making it this year is a complete sentence. It's a wall. A reason is a door. And for pushy people, a reason is just the opening bid in a negotiation they plan to win.
That is such a critical insight. Reasons are for reasonable people.
And notice the then part of the if-then protocol is always, always an action that you take. It's never, if my mom guilt trips me, then I will make her stop. You can't make her stop. You can only control your own actions. You can end the call. You can walk away.
As we're getting ready to wrap this up, there's one final, really provocative thought from the source that I think turns the mirror directly back on us. We've spent this whole time talking about how chasing closure is a trap set by others, but what if it's also a hiding place we choose for ourselves?
That's the question that can really keep you up at night, isn't it? Is your endless pursuit of closure actually just a sophisticated way to avoid the responsibility of making a hard decision for yourself?
Unpack that for me. How is looking for an explanation a way to hide?
Well, think about it. As long as I am waiting for you to apologize, as long as I'm waiting for you to explain yourself, as long as I'm waiting for you to officially end this ambiguous relationship, I don't have to do anything. I get to remain the passive, innocent victim in the story. I get to stay in the passenger seat of my own life.
But if I set the boundary, if I'm the one who says, this is over, if I walk away without their permission, then I might be the bad guy in the story.
Exactly. Setting a boundary requires you to accept the terrifying possibility that the other person will tell a version of the story where you are the villain. She just cut me off for no reason. He abandoned his family. She's so difficult and cold, he never even gave me a chance to explain.
And we are also deeply terrified of being the villain in someone else's story. We want to be the hero who tried everything, who was patient, who was kind.
So we stay in the trap. We stay in the pain of waiting for closure because that pain feels safer than the freedom of being misunderstood. But the boundary blueprint is crystal clear on this point. You cannot have freedom and universal approval at the same time. You have to pick one.
Wow. Say that one more time. You cannot have freedom and universal approval.
You have to be willing to be the bad guy in their distorted narrative in order to become the hero of your own actual life. You have to be okay with them being wrong about you.
That is the mic drop.
Yeah.
That is the thing we all need to just sit with for a minute. That's the real work.
It's the only way out of the trap.
So here's our final thought, our challenge to you listening to this. Look at just one area of your life this week. Just one. Where are you waiting? Waiting for that text, waiting for an apology, waiting for them to finally understand. And then ask yourself this one hard question. What if the answer never ever comes.
And assuming it never does, what fence are you going to build for yourself today?
Build the fence.
Build the fence.
Thanks for spending this time with us on Coffee Break. If this conversation stayed with you, you can find more episodes here on the channel. Until next time, take care.